if she enjoys what she's doing and she's getting benefit from what she's doing and she can stick at it consistently, she's ticking boxes and clearly it's working well for her because she's in bloody fantastic shape, she's bloody strong and clearly takes pride in her lifting and her content, which is something I really do love to see. Team, we're back in business today. Again, still not feeling 100%, but we're working on it. We're getting better slowly. Back in the gym now, so we're seeing what happens. A few things have occurred. So, firstly, I want to try and make content a bit more educational. I want to make content a bit more valuable to you, because ultimately, like I always say, if you're watching my videos, I want you to either come away from it having learned something, or at least smiled or found something funny, nice, uplifting, positive, something along those lines. So I really want to kind of stick to those messages and make sure my content does just that, because I feel like recently it may have been slipping away from that a bit. I want to kind of bring it back. If I'm not providing value to you, then to me this content serves no purpose. Do you know what I mean? It is all about making sure you are getting something from what you're watching. So you want to interact with it, so you want to engage with it, so you want to take notes from it, so you want to share it with your friends so they can learn and take value from it as well. Do you know what I mean? It's all about kind of giving you a reason to watch it, because I don't want you to spend your time on me without getting anything in return. And I also want to kind of make it a bit more applicable to goals beyond just hypertrophy. I do try and do this. I've started doing this a bit more recently, where I've kind of tried to look at things beyond the realm of hypertrophy, but I want to kind of make what I say applicable to multiple goals rather than kind of focusing on one. So the next video is probably going to be the next installment of the TFNO growth guide, in which we're going to speak about like chest training. And then a couple of weeks after that, I filmed it today actually, is a full workout analysis of my own leg day, because that was quite heavily requested when I did the upper body analysis a few weeks ago. So now we're going to do a leg day analysis. So look forward to that. On the agenda today, we're actually going to look at a new content creator that has been popped up, because I want to start looking at some new individuals rather than kind of repeating the same people over and over again. Again, obviously, if things pop up here and there that are relevant and necessary for me to talk about, I'm obviously going to talk about them. I want to branch out and start looking at some of the names. So I've been going through the Google Sheet, which is always linked in the description of my videos. I've been looking at some of the names and videos you've been suggesting. We're going through it now. And today we're going to look at like I said, a new creator called Analis Cruz, who's a Gymshark athlete. She's quite popular on the old Instagram and TikTok machine. Seems like she's recently ventured over to YouTube. But obviously, before we talk about it, we're going to do the bits and bobs that very quickly need to be done. If at any point throughout this video you take some value from this video, so like you said, you either like it, you smile, or you laugh, then please let me know just by liking the video and maybe even subscribing to the channel. And if you really want to, you can also tickle sharing it with a friend. But again, never feel like you have to. I'm merely stating that if you want to, it is very much welcome. At the end of every video, I do comment question of the week, so I answer a question from the previous comment section. So if you have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, then drop it down below and I shall do so. It's obviously headwear season. Sticking with the theme, I'm hoping this can actually sit in frame because I'm quite a fan of this one today. We're in business. So initially I thought it was just a bat ears. I didn't realize they had little devil horns as well. You wait till December, Christmas themed hats all month. It's going to be a field day. I might even get some Christmas themed leggings. It's going to look horrendous. You're going to hate it. I can't wait. Today we're actually looking at the ultimate back and bicep workout, Get Pumped with Analis Cruz. Interesting. So actually before we start the video, we're actually going to go through the overview of the session so we have an idea of what's to come. So we're starting with upper body mobility. I think that's fantastic. I'm a big fan of doing like a proper warm-up. Again, that can either be low intensity steady state cardio, so maybe walking on a treadmill for 5-7 minutes or something, and chuck in some mobility as well. I'm not really a fan of doing static stretching before working out, because that has been shown to potentially decrease performance. So typically I would say dynamic stretching or mobility stuff, in which you're taking your body through a range of motion that's largely going to be applicable to the session you're going to be conducting. So if you do a leg day, for example, you might take your body through a mobility routine that was very much lower body dominant, where you're taking it through knee flexion, extension, things along those lines. So from that we're going to pull-ups, 3 sets of AMRAP, so that's as many reps as possible. Bent over rows, 4 sets total. Warm-up set, then 4 working sets. Chest supported rows, 3 sets total. Superset lat pull-down wide grip with reverse grip. We're going to talk about that. Then cable seated row drop set, dumbbell bicep curl, superset preacher curl with preacher hammer curl. We've got lots to cover, so let's crack on. Again, as always, I waffle a lot, so you know the timestamps are always going to be linked down below, so just skip ahead if you want to. She's going through her mobility routine now, where she is kind of going through what I said, ranges of motion that her body is going to go through. Obviously she's going to do barbell rows and bent over rows, so she's taking her body through a very similar range of motion here. So the warm up here is very applicable to the movement she's going to be performing, which I think is fantastic. Big fan of that. And it's also really nice to see a creator promoting mobility. Pull-ups are a bloody solid movement. To be honest with that, this is bloody bloody impressive, like really impressive. Typically what I would do is I would kind of make sure to have a bit of a dead hang between reps and make sure you just take your moment before almost resetting and going up. The pull-up is a fantastic movement. It's also a very hard movement. So I know a lot of you probably aren't very good at pull-ups or really struggle with them. That's really normal, and that's almost to be expected because I think pull-ups are very difficult, and some people are just either naturally really good at them and some people sometimes aren't. Again, you can get better by practicing them and doing variations of them, like band assisted pull-ups, till you get strong enough to do them just body weight. Don't be disheartened if you can't do pull-ups. Like, honestly, it took me a long time to learn how to do them properly and learn how to do them well. But they're also actually probably not as good for the lats as you might think. And I haven't mentioned this before. So when you're doing pull-ups, most people say, I do pull-ups because I want to work my lats. When we're working the lats, we want the upper arm to largely be as close to the body as possible. Because the upper arm's out here, it does limit how close to the body it can get, therefore limit how involved the lats are. So again, like that's what I mean by it's probably not as good for the lats as you might think. Pull-ups are typically a bit more beneficial, depending on how you do them, for more of like the mid-back muscles. Again, they're fantastic depending on why you're doing them. Again, who are pull-ups good for is another question to ask. I think for hypertrophy, like I said, probably great for the mid-back, maybe not so much the lats. Like calisthenics, perhaps if you are very into like body weight movements, or you want to build arguably some kind of functional strength in which you move your body weight more efficiently, then pull-ups are obviously going to be absolutely fantastic for that goal, because you are doing just that. You are moving your body weight and using your body weight as resistance and getting better at doing so. So for those goals, you bloody nail it.
You don't want to use too much momentum. You want to stay still and use your back for the entire movement to create that mind to muscle connection.
So a couple of things there is, again, I agree, you don't want to use too much body English, because essentially you want to lift in the manner that best aligns with your goals. So if you're doing the barbell row, for example, which is what we're about to do here, for the sake of building your back muscles, your upper to mid back muscles, let's say, adding body English and body momentum may take emphasis away from those muscles and place that emphasis elsewhere, therefore kind of reducing how effective that movement is for the goal that it's intended for. Another one, obviously, Analis spoke about is mind muscle connection. So mind muscle connection very much refers to the sensation of the movement, so feeling it in the muscles you're hoping to feel it in. Sure, like it's always good to have some sensation. It's quite nice for us to be like, oh, I feel that, must be good. That's not necessarily the case. Mind muscle connection is a lot less important in the realm of like hypertrophy and just, I think, resistance training in general, unless maybe you're a beginner, than a lot of people might think. As you get stronger and you start lifting more and more weight, how much you feel that movement typically tends to decrease, because you're essentially channeling more energy into lifting that weight. Doesn't mean it's less effective, provided your technique is the same and provided those variables aren't changing. If you're progressively overloading, it looks how it should look, then just because you don't feel it as much doesn't mean it's necessarily worse. It's actually arguably probably better because you are progressively overloading. You can make really ineffective movements feel better than they actually are, in the sense that I could choose a movement that's just really just not a very good movement biomechanically, and I could really tense a muscle I'm hoping to work, therefore convince myself the movement I've just done is really good because I can really feel it, when in reality that sensation shouldn't dictate whether the movement is effective.
Starting heavy for 8 reps, RPE. I'll put it on the screen what RPE means.
So RPE, as she stated, is rate of perceived exertion. So essentially how hard you're training. So RPE 10 would be to failure. RPE 9 would be 1 left in the tank. RPE 9.5 would be maybe 1 left in the tank, etc, etc. And it's very similar to reps in reserve. So RIR, how many reps you have until you reach failure. 1 RIR would be 1 rep left in the tank until failure. 0 RIR would be that rep was the final rep. If you did another rep, you would fail, sort of thing. So again, they're just essentially measurements that you can use to determine and monitor your intensity, essentially. So how hard or how close you're training to failure. So the barbell row, again, similar to the pull-up, is probably not as good for the lats as you might think, because again, we've got that overhand grip, so naturally the elbow is going to flare a bit, therefore, because it's coming away from the body, reducing how effective it is for the lats. I think the barbell row is quite a solid movement for like upper to mid back muscles. The argument is, because it's not chest supported, so the lower back is now having to support a lot more than we kind of want it to. This lower back becomes a potential weakness or like a weak link in the chain. If you're doing heavy barbell rows, there's a high chance your lower back will fatigue before the upper to mid back muscles will. Therefore, this becomes a limiting factor, reducing how effective it is for, like I said, the intended muscles you're looking to target. So again, I think the barbell row is okay, and it's something I would maybe include if I wasn't going through like a massing phase where I was trying to optimize development. I would maybe include maybe in a deficit or something along those lines, but it's not like a staple movement for me personally when I'm trying to milk how much much muscle I can gain from my sessions. I think if you're training for more like sport-specific purposes, so let's say rugby, something along those lines, it's probably a lot more applicable because you're not going to be in the position of luxury where you have a chest support every time you're trying to pick things up. This, I would say, it's probably a lot more applicable to those who actually engage in sport external to optimizing hypertrophy. So when you actually have to think about your lower back as being heavily utilized without purely trying to optimize how much muscle you can build per movement. So again, it does very much have a time and a place. It's just very much goal dependent. So with this, essentially we're looking at chest supported dumbbell row. The neutral grip is good because now we can keep the arm a bit closer to the body, therefore targeting the lats a bit more. Fantastic. You'll see how she's taking her arms all the way back. So if we look at purely trying to emphasize the lats as much as possible, your lats have reached their like peak contraction, so their shortest position when your upper arm is in line with the body. So that would kind of be around here. When your upper arm is in line with the body, that's when the lats are at their shortest. Any range of motion beyond that position is no longer the lats, but it's more mid-back muscles. So if you are looking at really kind of honing in on the lats, you don't need to go beyond this. But as a whole, chest supported movements are fantastic because now we've eliminated the lower back's involvement. So this is no longer going to be a fatiguing point or a weakness that could prevent us from taking our lats to failure. So now we don't have to worry about our lower back giving out before our lats do. Fantastic. I would definitely state on movements, if you're doing any pulling movement and you really want to make the most of it for building muscle, I would definitely consider adding straps into the mix to eliminate grip as an issue. But that being said, if you want to work on your grip strength, so let's say you're doing sports like climbing, for example, or things along those lines where your grip is going to be a bit more tested, it could be wiser not to include straps because grip is going to be a very fundamental part of the sport you're engaging in. So again, you don't have to, it's just a consideration. One of the things I really like about Analis and this workout, she's explaining what she's doing and why she's doing it. She's giving some information rather than just showing you her workout and nothing else. It's quite instructional and I think that's really good. There's a lot of value to people just explaining their workouts and kind of give you a reason as to why you're doing it. It's all well and good saying do this, but I'm a big believer in having a justification. Say, well, why am I doing this? Well, you're doing this because of this. Oh, fantastic. Now I know why I'm doing it. Now I know it's for a reason, but also now I know how I can do it better because I know my reason why. The lat pull down would be a really good alternative if you can't do pull-ups, because again, you're going through a very similar range of motion, and similar to the pull-ups is that you're targeting a lot more of like the upper to mid-back muscles depending on how you do it. If you think about it, you are very much mimicking a pull-up to a certain extent here. Therefore, if you get really good at lat pull downs, you may progressively find yourself getting better at pull-ups as well. So you can definitely start with that before then progressing over to like banded pull-ups and things along those lines. The big thing here is range of motion. So what we're looking for is going as low as we can within our mobility limitations. So that could be to just below the chin, that could be to the upper chest. The other thing about underhand grip pull downs is because we're now adopting that underhand grip, it is going to bring the biceps a bit more into it, which then could then promote a bit more of a limiting factor of your biceps may give out before other muscles do, which could be a consideration and potentially a drawback or hindrance. And now we're moving on to the cable seated row. So obviously you've got the neutral grip, sliding back. So typically I would actually lean a bit forward on this. And the same rules kind of to the dumbbell row apply here. You don't need to take your upper arm beyond the torso because again, the lats are fully shortened when the upper arm is in line with the torso. The issue with this grip is because it's kind of a narrow grip, that can almost promote a bit of flaring and almost limit range of motion to a extent and almost limit how effective this movement is for the lats. So typically if you are looking at lats, I would try and find a very similar grip, but one that's a bit wider, that's maybe shoulder width. So again, you can run those arms really along the torso, thus increasing how efficient this is for the lats. But again, it is good movement. You can also play around, make so many different variations of this, so you can make it more upper back focus, more mid back focus. You can do it unilaterally. There's so many things you could do with this movement, and it's a great conclusion. Okay, so now we're done with the back side of things. We're actually moving on to the bicep side of things.
Not let the dumbbell hang. Keep the tension on your bicep. 20 reps.
That's not necessary. You want to fully extend the arm so you are stretching the bicep out and take it through its full range of motion. Keeping like the tension on the biceps is only going to elicit additional fatigue without actually increasing how stimulative it is for the biceps. So with this, typically I would fully extend, fully curl up. I'm really glad she has included this movement because the dumbbell curl is quite a boring movement, but arguably, in my opinion, it is one of the best bicep movements out there because it again very much focuses on the mid-range of the biceps when the kind of peak tension is at when the elbows are at 90 degrees, which is very much what the biceps seem to respond best to based on the current literature. So I'm really glad she's included that. It's a great movement, and I think it's a movement that, despite being a bit boring and looking a bit simple, I think a lot more people should probably consider including. This is mainly for the realm of hypertrophy, in which your bicep size is probably an important factor for you. If you're not training for hypertrophy, if you're training for powerlifting, arguably do you need bigger biceps? Probably not. If you're training for climbing or sport specific, is bicep training going to directly carry over to your sport? If it is, then sure, include them. If it's not, then realistically doing enough pull work, so like enough back work, due to the amount of elbow flexion you get throughout those movements, is probably going to suffice, and you may not need to train biceps directly unless it's a goal of yours to train them directly and elicit as much growth as possible. I know you see this now. I know you'll see it. You're seeing Superset. Oh, Harry's going to be angry about this. A curveball like the other video. You'll see. So we do a preacher curl here, which typically works the biceps in their shortened position because the elbow is in front of you. If the elbow was behind you when doing a curl variation, it would typically work the biceps in their lengthened position. In front of you, shortened, behind you, lengthened. So the preacher curl is a solid movement if you want to include it. Again, some people can't include it. So for me personally, I can't do barbell preacher curls because it does trigger a bit of tendonitis in my arm. So just for me, it doesn't align with me. It doesn't agree with me. Great control, really controlling the eccentric. Again, I would typically stretch out as much as you can within reason. Don't fully extend if you can't. It's looking at a quality rep, and I really like seeing that from content creators. Just quality movement. She's not rushing it. She's not ego lifting to throw on as much weight as possible. Good speed on the way up, controlling the way down. So this is a superset. So we're going from the preacher curls, then we go straight into dumbbell hammer preacher curls. I know you're thinking, Harry, you hate supersets. And in a lot of cases, I think obviously supersets have a time and place. What does have more of a time and place in the context of hypertrophy are things called compound sets. It's training two movements that work similar muscles or the same muscles in slightly different positions. When your wrist is supinated, so you're curling like so, that's going to be quite bicep dominant. As soon as you turn into a neutral grip, you're going to reduce the emphasis that's been placed on the bicep, although it's still going to have some bicep there because obviously elbow flexion, but you're going to increase the emphasis that's been placed on the brachialis, which is a muscle underneath the bicep. So when you're doing a compound set with the biceps, I think going either from biceps from like a shortened position to a lengthened position is a good shout, but also doing a bicep curl in which you're going from biceps to brachialis, so hammer curls, is also a really good pairing. Personally, I probably wouldn't do it on the preacher curl myself. I would probably do it just standing with an easy bar curl and then dumbbell hammer curls. It's obviously done for a reason and not for the sake of just Instagram and YouTube, and I think it's pretty clear that from first impressions anyway, Analis seems to be pretty clued up on hypertrophy training at least, and seems to take quite a lot of pride in her workout and the quality of her movements. But yeah, that is largely the video. We've covered it, and again, this is the first video I've seen of this creator. She, like I said, it seems to be quite new to YouTube, but first impressions are good. Like, the only thing I would say is I think the volume is a bit excessive, but that's just my personal opinion. But that depends on the goal really. So for bodybuilding and like hypertrophy, I probably think about 1 or 2, mainly occasionally 3. For like powerlifting and other goals, I wouldn't be opposed to going 3+ sets, again, depending on the movement, but it seems like her primary goals are very much hypertrophy driven. So for those goals, I would, like I said, would probably limit movements to probably about 2 sets per movement, because you really don't need a lot of volume. Intensity, so how hard you're training and your proximity to failure, is going to be a much bigger driver of hypertrophy, so building muscle, than volume will be. To an extent, it's kind of finding that balance. I think the number of exercises is probably on the top end for my liking personally. The number of sets, again, probably a bit more than I would like personally, but again, that's just me personally. She might like it and it might work well for her, and I completely respect that. Everybody's different. We have different goals and opinions. If she enjoys what she's doing and she's getting benefit from what she's doing, and she can stick at it consistently, she's ticking boxes, and clearly it's working well for her because she's in bloody fantastic shape, she's bloody strong, and clearly takes pride in her lifting and her content, which is something I really do love to see. And now we're very quickly going to crack on with comment question of the week, and it's a pretty good one from Austin actually. What are your go-to resources / what steps do you take in determining if an influencer or information you found online is actually accurate and can be trusted? So regarding resources, I have a few like trusted people online that I kind of go to for information who typically support what they're stating with evidence. So you've got Paul Carter, JPG, Ryan Dewars, Chris Beardsley, and a few other individuals there like Mike Israetel, etc, etc. And like I said, they make a claim and they support it with science, saying actually here's a research that supports what I'm stating, which I do love to see. So that's that. And typically with influencers, it's very much, is what they're saying either supported by science, so they're backing it up, or is what they're saying supported by science in the sense that what they're saying I can back up with evidence that actually proves what they're saying to be correct. If they're ticking those boxes, it's looking pretty good. I don't use physique as an indication or measurement of how well they can be trusted. I don't use their strength as an indication or measurement of how well they can be trusted. What I look for is essentially data. That's a bloody great question. I like that. But like I said at the start of the video, if at any point throughout this video you decide you like the video, then please please let me know you like the video just by liking the video, and maybe even subscribing to the channel and sharing with a friend if you so wish. Again, never feel pressure to do so, just know it is very appreciated if you do choose to do so. As always, if you have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, then please don't hesitate to drop it down below in the comment section for the comment question of the week, and I shall certainly do so. But now, I must love you and leave you, and you'll have to wait till next Monday to see the next installment of the TFNL Growth Guide, in which we're going to go through chest training, so the pecs. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating me speaking much faster than I should, because it's a bad habit I need to get out of. And thank you for tolerating the video.